All right, welcome everybody to another insightful episode of Creatives Chat.
We have Dawn Spiegelberg, a heart coherence coach, a fencer, an all-around healer who helps people awaken and tap into their life purpose.
Our show shall begin now.
Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by
wearehistorically.com, Conscious Human Apparel, and
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Everybody, meet Dawn.
Oh, Dawn, thanks for coming back on Creatives Chat. How are you doing today?
I'm great today. Thanks for having me.
Well, I just want to dive right into it because you said something that really pulled at the heartstrings in the green room, and it was a plant doesn't need to know what kind it is to grow. And in relation to self-mastery, what does that perspective of nature really mean?
That is a beautiful question. And I'm compelled to share with you something that I've seen in many chiropractors' office, which are little signs that say the energy that made you can heal you. Right? So the world is full of energy.
Yeah.
And the energy is what causes the plant to grow. The plant has the information in it. The seed has all the information, but the tree's not in the seed. I've split open seeds, cut them open, looking at what's inside. Or I've sliced an apple and a seed was cut in half, and there's no tree in there. There's no root inside that seed. There are no leaves. The inside of a seed is just potential. So what's growing that seed? And the seed doesn't have to know what it is. It doesn't have to know that it's going to grow an apple tree. It doesn't have to know that it's an avocado seed.
Yeah.
There's
Just
energy.
fights for life.
Yeah. The energy grows it, no matter what seed it is. It's the same energy. So the truth is that same energy that grows the seed is the same energy that grows you. It's the energy.
Yeah.
I like to call it the life force that animates us.
Ooh, gosh, I love it. Yeah, I totally resonate with that.
Mm-hmm. So when you think of an atom, right, the traditional image of an atom is the nucleus with the protons and neutrons. And then the electrons kind of somewhere outside it. And if you look at it, most of the image of an atom that we see is just empty space.
Yeah.
It's completely empty. And the parts that are actual particle make up a very small percentage, right? It's 99.9999999999996.
Yeah, space, yeah.
And that rest of 0.00000000000 at 12 zeros 4 is the particulate. So the space is not empty like scientists thought it was for so long. That space is the energy.
Yeah, the ether.
Yeah, the ether that is the signature of life.
Takes a whole new spin on the Genesis creation aspect of the sea of space created, where it's like this is a sea of energy in which we're living in. It's just the same thing, as water to the fish. As we're breathing in, we're all around it. We're navigating through this energetic ether. I love it. I love it.
You mentioned the Genesis story. I was just looking up what the first word of the Torah is. Which one is it? Is it God? Is it created? Is it beginning? And in the research I did, it's a word, Belshrit or Belashrit or some Hebrew word. But it's amazing because the way the Hebrew language is written, there are different vowels and indicators of vowels. And the person who wrote the article proposed an idea that the way it was written in English is actually not accurate. In the beginning, God created, because of the alphabet. So the alphabet does not indicate in the beginning God created. The alphabet is actually in the beginning of God creating. So creating is a constant, and it's still happening.
Yes.
So he proposed that in the beginning of God, creation is creating and still creates.
Oof. Ooh. That takes my imagination and just intuition so many different places, because even in Western science, we've concluded that every moment is recreated and destroyed. And it's so funny how it's that space, just akin to like the 12 zeros for the atom. There's a trillionth, like exponential decimal to a second, where there's nothingness at all times, that this slice of now is always getting destroyed and recreated with each moment. We don't perceive it that way because we have the consciousness aiding on our continuation of flow so we don't go insane. But it's just one of those things where it's like every moment, destroyed, recreated, destroyed, recreated, destroyed, recreated. So it really does bring so much testament to each moment you can transform yourself.
Yes.
Ooh.
Which speaks to our self-mastery.
Yeah.
And who was it? Deepak Chopra said, between stimulus and response, there is a period of time. And between each moment created, there is a period of time where we are completely collapsed, and we have an opportunity to recreate, to make a different choice. And that is self-mastery, the willingness to be recreated, the willingness to be destroyed and to be recreated anew.
Takes surrender to a whole nother level when you think about it like that. But the question is, do you really have to try to grow?
No, because the energy is there already, right? There is no try. How did he say that?
Do or do not, there is no try.
There is no try. So it's a natural aspect of how we are, how the world is. So when you look at nature, which I love to do as examples of what life is like, what the universe is about, and how to be, how we can be, you can look at a squirrel and say, is this squirrel, has it become self-mastered? There's no question. There's no squirrel school. You don't see them going off to college to learn how to plant those berry seeds and then find them again. They're not going to geography or geomapping 101. Squirrels are mastered. They are a master because they're a squirrel.
It's the pure expression of self.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that you can do wrong in that sense, because the universe is always going to flow through you and express what needs to be called forth or arisen in the moment.
Yes. And they are completely doubtless.
Yeah, very true. It is the human experience where we have the expansive tool belt of the mind.
The tool belt of the mind.
Yeah, so it's this tool belt of the mind that really does open up these avenues of our own self-sabotage. And I think that's probably the one gift that the human experience has. But again, it's that double-edged sword, because it can give us the comprehension, it can give us the ability to fully plan out things and strategize. The tactfulness comes into play, which helps in longevity, but it's also the main component at our own adversity. It's like we hear it all the time growing up, like we're our worst enemies, but it's whatever we hold on to attachment wise.
Yes.
It's fascinating to think of things like that in the sense of self-mastery.
And here's insight into why it can be our undoing. The mind has the ability to compare, contrast, measure, and all of those things require judgment. So if you're comparing, this is a pencil, this is a magic wand, or pen, and this is a magic wand. One is black and one, has little stars and crystals that spin around in it. So we can distinguish between them. I would not pick this up and begin to write with it or try to write with it. Yeah. So it has a purpose. And when we apply that purpose to people, that's where we get into trouble.
Yeah.
When we apply the comparing, contrasting with an intent that is not for the best and highest good, we flatten the wave function and we don't see the whole atom. We only see the parts. We only see the particle. We don't see the energy. And when we don't see the energy, we do not perceive as God perceives, which is in entirety.
And see, this is where it's so funny when it's like the entirety of the story of, Adam and Eve's time in the garden, the forbidden fruit, the fruit of knowledge. It was the moment it was eaten, that's when that separation, separateness, otherness, the perceived other comes into existence, where it's, being one with everything, walking around naked gleefully in the garden, and then you eat the fruit of knowledge and all of a sudden it's this veil of otherness. Yeah. It's almost this internal trap where it's interesting because we have so much potential and opportunity to grow when we question that sense of separation. And it's that spiritual paradox, as I like to call them, is when we separate ourselves from the concept and idea of separation itself, that's when we really start to dive deep within ourselves and the truth of the one. So everything's getting validated further and further as time goes on. We can just see it. I love it.
For me, as a heart coherence coach and practicing heart qualities, heart focus, I really think that moment in the garden when Adam and Eve shifted, they became separated from their heart knowingness. So it was this alignment of the heart and the mind together, communicating, seeing, because before that separation, Adam named all the animals. So his mind was still functioning fully because he was comparing and contrasting, but he was doing it from a perspective that was seeing the whole thing, not from being separated.
And I just want to take that a step further because, I think that's one of the things that it's kind of another perspective. I guess you would say it's almost an assumption that a lot of people have, going on the path of self-mastery, awakening, unfoldment, whatever you want to call it, that somehow when you enter into the knowingness of what one is and oneness is and source knowing is, that somehow you transcend all these different things. It's like the mind never goes away, but it reverses the order of operation. We think so. Before the spiritual search, everyone starts in this top-down orientation, where it's you just think you're everything in here, and then it comes down through the other centers, and then the heart is like kind of like the last thing. The gut and everything are ignored, but that's the real flip of the switch in terms of the self-mastery path, is you start to actually listen to what the heart is always telling you. And it's that love of the human spirit that radiates outward and just kind of fills up the wells of everything else. So it's resonating with me when you're saying that, and it makes so much more sense in terms of even how children operate. You can see their selflessness, they're still living in the heart, and then it just gets kind of, the ivy grows in the mind, and then they get caught and trapped in it. But
you said beautifully what I tell people when I try to explain to them what heart coherence is, because a lot of people, they don't know what it is yet, right? They haven't heard about it. And I say, it's quieting the loud voice in your head so you can hear the softer voice from your heart.
Yeah, only speaks once too. That's the truth. It's just very calm, affirmative knowing, and then that's the game of the mind. Is it's always like the loudest voice, the most frequent voice gets heard. And that's a good trick for all you listeners out there, to using your own discernment and really gaining the recognition of your intuition speaking. Like that's what I think of intuition when I think of the heart. You know, in terms of just that, it's a knowing too. It's very interesting. It's almost as if the mind likes to echo it, but in truth, you hear it here first.
Yes. Yeah. The heart is what emanates the electromagnetic field. And that electromagnetic field, which is 5 to 8 feet outside of us, is that quote unquote empty space, but full of information. And the heart is attuned to it.
Yeah.
The heart can tell the subtle shifts. It knows and it perceives before our mind is aware. The place that I'm certified through Heart Math, they've been conducting some amazing experiments where they'll sit people in front of a computer and they'll flash, did I tell you this before? They'll flash images on the screen, and there's about a 10-second delay between images. So some of the images are a rabbit or the beach, and other images are, you know, a scary face or a growling dog. And they're measuring the response of the heart and measuring the response of the head. And it turns out that the heart can detect what the image is going to be 6 seconds before the image shows up.
What?
Yeah. This is powerful stuff.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. And I guess that's one of the biggest things as I've been observing throughout, you know, the experience as of late, especially these past few months. More and more people's abilities are kind of awakening, and their sensitivity to, you know, more energetic feedback is becoming stronger. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of shout outs that I want to let people know. If, you know, if you align yourself with the understanding that you're an empath, you know fully that everyone has this ability to be like empathetic. Truly, we all feel each other all the time, but it's the association where you always have to kind of keep yourself in check, because I've been so much more consciously aware of my own energy going into a room and all the bombardment of other people's that I receive. And years ago now, oh, it's even weird to be like decades ago, but it's one of those things where I would always get very confused. It would almost be I'd be lost and tossed about in the ocean and not really know which boat was mine. And I think that's something, you know, that this really does speak to a great importance of work that people should be doing, is really understanding their own beingness fully in this realm of the heart.
What I found important is when you're already full,
right,
other people, their energy is not bombarding you.
Right. You're radiating it.
Yes. So what did they used to say? Your mother would say, be careful who you hang out with.
Yeah, those types of things.
Right. And it's true, because, and we see this in nature, something called diffusion. Diffusion is a concentration from high to low. So if it's a high concentration of rebellion, you know, delinquency,
oh yeah,
all those things, if that's a high concentration, it will go to the lower concentration of, you know, your heart and your mind and your soul. And if it's a higher concentration of love, which is why I say fill yourself with love first. If it's a higher concentration of love, it will diffuse into those around you.
And that's the thing where you get into like the energetic component of our existence, where you begin to, you know, I like to see it as that as above, so below concept, where the greatest mass is what things gravitate towards. And love is like that great density, you know, and it's almost, I akin it more so to a black hole, where it's just like the most concentrated form of existence is just a pure silent knowing of just love. and then everything else starts to gravitate towards it. You start to manifest things more. You walk outside, you do some random things. Oh, people are talking to me randomly. What is this? You know, you have people ask you for help. It's a funny switch when people really transition into recognizing that you have to be your own source of love. And it's when we recognize it's when we are that love, that's when things get crazy.
You're absolutely right. And as parents, I'm going to complain a little bit. Parents, I really believe a parent's role is to model and demonstrate all the love, all the safety, and all the value of their children, for their children. I believe that's a parent's role. And then when the child leaves home, then they know to get that from the source. Because they realize they're not going to get it from other people, right? Through experience, through trial, through error, they leave home and they realize, I'm not getting love from this group of people or from these friends. I'm not feeling safe in this environment. And then they go to the source for it.
100%. Give them their own compass of empowerment to know which way's home, so to speak. And I guess that's kind of a fascinating role because, you know, as a parent, I'm sure you can speak on this. I've found from my own like 10 years of teaching that you can always tell the parents that do provide their kids the tools to really be themselves, you know, that self-empowerment and, you know, that inquisitiveness versus the ones that are kind of conditioned to be little mini-me's. It's always very fascinating because they do things that are kind of out of the range for what kids should be doing at that age, a little bit more malicious, a little bit more, you know, can be vindictive. So it is really, it's a double-edged sword when you think about it like that. You know, that's, some kids can take it and run with it and turn into little adults, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But when you have a child who's self-aware, it's kind of like, you know, when you're an adult and kind of awaken in things, you're playful, you know, so they're always playful in their sense of self.
Yeah, what I've noticed is that the child is mimicking behavior that they learned.
Right. Indiscriminately too.
Indiscriminately. And so when my children are in school, you know, when they were in public school, I could tell what kind of parents these children had. And it brought about more compassion because I realized these kids were just doing what they learned.
Right.
Parents model what it is to be an adult. And when a child is bullying or not being nice or something, it was modeled to them. So I was able to be more compassionate toward the children and direct my ire where the cause was, you know, it was the parents.
Yeah. Well, I guess that kind of taps into, you know, bringing it back into that concept of self-mastery. How does one really begin that journey of squeezing out the sponge of those conditionings to reawaken to like the unique self before you soaked up all of these learned behaviors?
Yeah. Of course, it's a part of how we are made. We are made. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the author Carolyn Mace. She wrote a book called The Anatomy of the Spirit, and she compares three traditions. Let me see if I can name them. One is the Catholic. You know, they have the catechism, the baptism and catechism and all of that. And she talks about the chakras, and then another one, I don't recall exactly what it is, but she says it matches human development. So from age 0 to 7, you're developing your first chakra. The first chakra is safety. Who are you in the tribe? Are your parents the leaders? Are your parents the healers? Are your parents the hunters? Who are your parents? And you're discovering where you fit in the whole global network. So given that, children are developing who they are and how to be in society just in the first 7 years.
Yeah.
And they 100%. Say those are the 7 years where there is no real conscious engagement. It's all subconscious. So all of the programming, all of the, we don't have enough money or we've got lots of money. We grow food in our yard or all the food comes from the grocery store. All of those paradigms are developed until you're 7 years old.
Yeah.
So it's by design because it's based on survival. And of course, we don't live in tribes anymore. We're not Indians on the plains anymore, but it serves them, tribal individuals, in the same way that it serves us with all our conveniences of microwaves and fast food, and it's interesting. I've studied under a mentor who reminded me that of our basic needs, the first thing we need is air. Right? Without air, where are we?
Yeah.
And then of course, there are other things we think about. Well, we need food and water, right? But most people don't grow food and most people don't have easy access to water. So what's the second thing? You have to have money to get food and water. Yeah. So it's air and money at the top of the list.
And most people in the modern day don't even value the air they're breathing.
Yes. Or they're worried about where money is going to come from or how they're going to get money. And there's so many stories about that. So when it comes to self-mastery, there are so many layers, like an onion, that get stacked up on us. And how deep are you willing to go? How intentional can you become in order to see what behaviors you developed because of the time in which you grew up, right? They talk about the baby boomers and they talk about Generation Xers and Yers and Zs and those big, bold groups of people are formed based on the environment that they're raised in.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You need that different tool to fix each one's issues. Yeah.
So this leads me to share with you, I'm going to go back to the plant analogy. I went to a new church on Sunday just to check it out. And the preacher was talking about how Christ said only 25% of the people who hear the message, who are exposed to divine truth, are able to receive it. And I thought, where did he come up with that? 25%? And it was one of the parables that Jesus told. So he was talking about the man sowing seed. And some seed fell on the hard ground, like the road. And it was hard and packed down like clay. So what happened, the birds came and ate it. Even if it had germinated, it wasn't able to get into the dirt.
Yeah.
And it was gone. And then the next one is stones. So seed thrown in stones, it germinates, but it doesn't have a strong environment. It's difficult to get nutrients from stone, so it doesn't thrive either. And then the third group was weeds. And the weeds tend to grow faster and there are more, and it chokes out the seed that's there. And it wasn't until the fourth that it was the ground, the fertile ground, that the seeds were able to thrive. So what does that tell me? Environment is everything. So at the beginning, we talked about our seed. Our seed is coated with all the information. Our seed cannot grow on its own. It must have the energy from divine source to grow. And what initiates that growth? It's the environment. So what environments are we living in?
That's interesting.
Yeah, so self-mastery. Let's get back to the self-mastery. Do you surround yourself in an environment? Well, you can see a part of my environment is books. I love learning. I love books. That's a part of the environment I create for myself. And I have a husband and 2 children. That's another environment. And of course, the world labels me in a particular way for having a husband and having 2 children. Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting?
Yeah.
And I'm in the same house that I bought. The children have lived in the same house. We haven't moved. That's a different environment.
Yeah.
So our environment really can influence how much we grow, the rate at which we grow, whether we grow well, whether we're stunted in our growth. Environment is everything.
Yeah. Well, and see, this is where I want to play a little, a little tennis with you on that.
Yeah.
In the sense of, I think that's one of the reasons why it's kind of what you said earlier, and it's in the same parable, is that every seed has the potential to grow.
Yeah.
And though some of the environments are difficult, it still can grow.
Mm-hmm.
However, here, when we look at it in this sense, it ultimately is up to the individual how they want to choose to capitalize on the experience. I think that's the fortunate thing of being a human being, is that we have the greater sense of intellect where we can actually discern and learn from the environment. If we want to really peel those layers back to the onion to recognize, oh, well, this effect that's manifested in my life could be easily connected to this causal force. Well, why do I still hold on to it? Blah, 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 like all the different avenues of introspection. So, personally, I think the percentage of people who get it is probably even less than 25%. But I think the truth here is that we're unlike the seeds in the sense of each of us has the full potential to utilize whatever environment we chose to get incarnated into to transcend even higher.
So, right. So you're talking about as above, so below.
Yeah.
And my examples of environment were external.
Yeah.
I was talking about my house. I was talking about my family, right?
Yeah.
And if you look to the teachings of Frankl, who created logotherapy,
what is that?
His environment is the inside.
The inner and outer space. Yes.
Yeah. He was a psychotherapist, I think a psychotherapist who was in a concentration camp during the Holocaust.
Yeah,
and he was seeing people, right? Because they were in an environment, and some of them just collapsed, of course.
Yeah.
And he created logotherapy because he created an environment that was not contingent on the external world. He created an environment on the internal world inside. And so we can go back to our Adam and Eve, right? When there was heart coherence and when there was affinity and oneness in the thinking and the heart.
Yeah.
Then there was bliss. Then there was the Garden of Eden, and then there was separation. And so there was a tension on the external.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're naked. Cover yourself up, woman. Right?
Yeah.
So the environment of our own mind, and of course, Eckhart Tolle talks about this. He says we're all so caught up in our thinking we don't realize that we're all suffering from the same thing, and that we don't have to.
Yeah.
My words, right? He said it more beautifully. But what's the environment of your mind?
Yeah, your internal state.
Yeah. And athletes know this. Athletes are really tuned into this, because and I'm a fencer. So if I'm fencing and I try to touch somebody and I miss, and I say, "Oh, damn it." That doesn't help.
Yeah.
That
just gonna leave you open.
Yeah, and what's also important is it doesn't respect my opponent. Because if I attack them and they parry, that's what they should do. So I'm not holding them in the highest personal regard in that moment. So this right here, this mind, this brain, is the environment that can prevent you from your self-mastery.
Mm. Yeah.
And it contributes to people's physical ailments,
Yeah.
the way they show up in the world.
100%. And it's funny because that same component of the environment, when you choose to externalize the pain, and I call it, like the victimhood, where it's,
Mhm.
oh, life doing this to me, my world
Mhm.
doing this to me, this,
Mhm.
instead of recognizing, well, what is this doing for you?
Yes.
What are the lessons to learn from this? We have the ability to kind of put our seed in whatever environment we choose.
Yes.
And it's funny because when you're talking about, the moment you said the words, the external space, and then it was like the internal space, I had this just flooding download of an image of just like a clear plastic bottle filled with air and getting dragged down into the abyss, and the pressure crushes it,
Mhm.
versus the same clear bottle but open to be filled up with the water just sank to the bottom.
Mhm.
So it's that same component of it's like the pressurization where nothing can fully break you when you radiate from within. You
Yes.
fill yourself up. And it's the diffusion that you were talking about. It's the same concept. Like, I love it. That's the beauty of, this spiritual search and these inner lookings of self-mastery, is there's so many different ways to come at it, yet they all lead to the same result. Look
Yes, they
within,
do.
Radiate from within.
Yes.
Fall in love with your truth, fall in love with yourself, and then your unique, beautiful self can express itself fully.
Mhm.
Oh,
And you don't have to know what that self is.
mm,
You don't have
Ooh.
to know what the plant is in order to grow.
Yeah.
You don't have to know what your life purpose is in order to live your purpose, because it's a journey.
Yes. Yes.
Think of the hero's story, right? The journey of the hero.
Yeah.
What, like Hercules, he was supposed to kill the Hydra or something, and his focus was on that goal. He had other goals too, but his focus was on the goal. So he had to take himself from where he was and get to where the Hydra was in order to accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what was in his way. It didn't matter if there was a woman. It didn't matter if there was a river. It didn't matter if there was a city or an army. He was going to the Hydra, and that was his goal.
Yeah. See, that component of, with the nature aspect, the seed doesn't really know what it's going to be. It just grows.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful opportunity that we have when we willingly, willfully partake in this journey of growth,
Mm-hmm.
is that, again, we have to surrender the mind's assumptions, the imagination of what we think our path should be or how it's going to develop, and
Yeah.
just fully embrace the change. And then life transmutes into this beautiful dance of letting go and receiving grace, letting go even more and receiving even more grace,
Yes.
until we're just overflowing. And that's, I'm feeling that. I like that nature aspect.
Yeah. Letting go and having a willingness. So there's two questions to ask. Are you willing? Are you able? And on the journey of life. So when I was married, roses and, fireworks, and it was all wonderful. And had I seen the mountains and the valleys and the precipice and all of it after this many years, I don't know that I would have gotten married. And they say that we're only given what we're capable. We're not given more than what we're capable of experiencing, of changing. And so I think that's a gift that we can't see the future, because if you look at how we are now and what life was like a year and a half ago, no one could have foreseen it. Nobody knew, nobody could see the changes that we went through.
Yeah. 100%.
And yet here we are.
Mm.
And we're moving forward and we're continuing on our path. This is self-mastery 101, every moment, every day. Am I willing? Am I able?
Mm. And even then it comes back to that component of every moment is new. And when you truly treat it as such,
Yes.
every breath becomes that renewal for life, you know, that contract to growth and just learning. I mean, again, I really do like the way you, again, highlighted the point of willingness. We have to be willing to partake in this. We have to be willing to let go of the expectations, you know, of our own personal self-directed judgments to really blossom into who we were and always will be intended to be in this experience. But it has to be that willful embrace of the unknown.
Yes. Yeah, because if we're being created and destroyed every moment, what causes us to come back in that moment of being recreated again? Because the moment we're destroyed, we could stay there. We could stay in the abyss. But we choose to come back and we choose to keep our memories. And someone said every morning you wake up and there is that reconsciousness of all your problems and all your memories. It comes back and you reconstitute it every morning.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing right there, is that there's so many practical exercises, and this is really just some little nuggets of wisdom for the listeners, is the practical exercise of giving gratitude and doing a personal I am, you know, affirmation, you know, whatever you choose to have follow that, is the quickest way to slow down that inertia of always getting caught up in your own rat race. Like, I remember distinctly in my own unfoldment, there was times when the moment I would wake up, it would just be like, I feel like I would take a breath and then all of a sudden it was just like the mind like going through all the problems that I had in the past and the worries of the future. And I remember the first moment, probably after like a few days of consistent, you know, like morning, night meditation, affirmations in the morning, you know, while I'm brushing my teeth before bed, I woke up and it was just silent.
Wow.
And it was just like, hello? Like, it was almost like there's no problems being said. And then the moment I even went there with my intuition, instantly it was just like, well, there's this one and this one and this one and this one.
Yes.
And then it was this intuitional knowing of just like, it's always been a choice. It's been a choice to participate in that game of the mind versus just doing something else. And then that's when it's just like, boom, skyrocketed in terms of different recognitions of the mind. But the biggest thing I can always advise people is just being willing to do something different. Like, instead of continuing that path of suffering and chaos and, you know, internal chatter.
That internal chatter is the environment that you're trying to grow a seed.
Right.
And it was beautiful that you used gratitude and an I am statement to change the ground, to change the environment of your seed, and look how you've grown. And what's beautiful about the gratitude and your I am statements is that your mind is now looking for the next one. Your mind is now cued into seeking the next gratitude, looking for the next thing to be grateful for, and you're stimulating the gratitude polypeptides. I want to mention this again, and I think I may have mentioned it in the last show, but when we have feelings, they are actually a protein molecule that we're experiencing, that we produce with the hypothalamus. And so if you constantly are producing a feeling of overwhelm or chaos, that feeling, that protein is in your blood and it's stimulating all your cells, and all the cells are accustomed to chaos and problems. And the happiness or the gratitude receptors start to dwindle. But you shifted it and you give yourself gratitude and your I am statements, which means your hypothalamus is producing gratitude proteins. And those gratitude proteins are stimulating all your little cells to experience gratitude, which is changing your vibration. It's changing your environment.
Yeah.
And when you change the inside, the outside is affected.
100%. I love how you tap back into the vibrational component, because it really is what radio station you're choosing to turn to and tune yourself to that's going to emit whatever you really want. And I think that's the thing right there is, I always try to end the imagination of my own students, because they like to say, oh, you probably experienced this and this and this and a whole bunch of assumptions, where it's just like, no, I still have chaos. I still have people cut me off on the freeway. I still have rude people I experience every now and then, and just random chaos in life as it is. But you're no longer a slave to the temporary.
Yes. I was just mentioning to my acupuncturist what happens in transformation. And I was trying to explain it to her with the story of the hero. So the hero goes on their journey, they accomplish what they're going to accomplish, and then they go back home. What changed? Home is the same. Their parents are there. It's the same city, the same people waking up in the morning, buying their bread in the corner store. What changed? The hero changed.
Yeah.
The world did not change. The hero changed. So I've been going through my own transformation now. I've been shifting out of the mental construct of the roles I am in as a woman, as a mother, and as a wife. I was raised by a woman who grew up in the 50s. And so I'll just say the overall theme is to be a housekeeper and be satisfied with that.
Yeah.
Right. There are more details, but in general, it's you're a woman, so you should be a housekeeper and be satisfied with that. And what did I do? I went out and I got married and I had kids. And so here I am finding myself keeping house. And yet I am not satisfied with it. So for a long time, I was, there's underwear on the floor again. Oh, there's toys that didn't get put away. Oh, there's school books all over, right? It was this constant battle about this role I was taking. And I've transformed it because I've shifted what goes on here. Now, I wake up in the morning, and what happens? There's still underwear on the floor. But what has changed? Not the underwear, me.
Yeah.
Now I go over and I pick it up. Or I say, please pick that up again. Instead of, I asked you to pick that up 3 times. I say, please pick that up. Please pick that up. As if it's a new experience, as if it wasn't there 10 minutes ago, or yesterday, or last week, right? As if it's a new experience, I say, please pick that up. Yeah. So what's different? Here, me. The world stays the same.
And see, that right there is the power of perspective. And that's also the liberation that arises when one does seek and fully commit themselves, this dedicate themselves to the self-mastery, because with self-mastery comes self-knowing. And when you know yourself, you know everything else.
Yes.
And that you can take that, listeners, as however you want to, but there's some depth to that statement. But where it comes to this component of everything that you do in this world is within your power. From whether you choose to give away the keys to your kingdom and let others disturb you, or if you're going to let others, hinder your shine. It becomes this conscious awareness of like your abilities, your capabilities. It gives you the vulnerability to ask for help, to do all these different things and question these conditionings. So, identifications and attachment are a huge thing hindering people from really waking up to who they are.
Yes. So I want to encourage everyone. They've probably heard the little phrase, where your attention goes, energy flows. And there's more to it. Where your attention goes, energy flows. So you're putting intention into something. Your attention is stopped by something, and then you're focusing on it, right? So you're putting energy into it. So where your attention goes, energy flows. Feeling grows.
Mm.
So we assign a meaning to something. We often decide that it's good or bad, right? And when we stay neutral, then we can hold it in gratitude. Then things are happening for us, not to us. And then the last part, when we get through all those, the last part is our heart knows, which means our heart can perceive the truth. And that's the key to self-mastery.
I love that. I love that. That's great. And that just opens up so many doors, because in that moment of inner looking there, I found experientially and through others' journeys that there's always some catalyst that really is that. I mean, we have many opportunities for this catalyst to awaken us, but it's always that point where it makes you either choose continue the external and you just go right back around in the giant rotary of life, or it's pivot, take it somewhere you haven't yet. What's going on with me? What's going on in this inner space? And that's the beauty aspect of giving the attention to your full self.
Yes.
You know, that sense of self, without anything else, you know. And I like to akin it to kids, where it's like, you know, little kids always go, I am this, I am that.
Yeah.
Eliminate the adjectives. Focus on the I am.
Yes.
Right there. That's all you need.
I want to encourage everyone, because I've been thinking about nature again, and resistance, in particular air resistance, right? Air flow. And I have been meeting resistance with a wall, putting up a wall and being like, oh, I gotta resist the resistance, right?
Yeah.
And I realized, wait a minute, birds use air resistance. So a bird's wing is formulated in such a way, it's formed in such a way, right? I say formulated, it's designed in such a way that as air hits it, so air is required. As air hits it, some of the air goes down, and some of the air on the top is shot up at a more stark angle. And then there's this little space here, right? So this is the wing and this is the air. And this little space right here between the air and the wing, there is a vacuum. And you know what nature does with vacuum? It fills it. So what does the wing do? The wing goes up.
Love it.
The bird flies higher. So here I am, right? I'm meeting resistance like a wall. Instead, I can meet resistance and form myself in such a way that I can use the resistance to lift me higher, higher vibration, higher knowing, more wisdom.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many testaments to that same knowledge, where we can never fully question what life is providing us, because everything is grace.
Yes.
And when we really utilize it like that, every opportunity is one that you can really take flight.
It's for us.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, in this perception of nature, what has been one of the big shifts to kind of break down and understand self-mastery in this perception with nature as that lens and veil? How did that awaken? I'm curious.
Well, through hearing a coach say, you know, raccoons don't have to go to raccoon school, I started looking at nature differently. And I began seeing, and this was several years ago, I began seeing that a lot of the things that happen in nature when we look, so where my attention goes, energy flows, and I began seeing from a more broader perspective, a bigger picture, let's say. I have a great example of my garden and what my garden looked like before I practiced heart coherence. It really looked like a mess. I had plants and the weeds were coming up, and the plants, the way I was, right, I'd say, oh, what is this plant? Oh, this looks like a garlic in the middle of my chard. So I would let the garlic grow, and then there wasn't room for chard. And it was messy looking. And then I started practicing coherence, which is affinity, which is the heart informing the thinking, changing the environment. And when I would go to the garden, I wasn't attached to the garlic being in with the chard. I would choose to move the garlic, or things were shifting. And there was one moment, I take a lot of pictures of my gardens. I had taken a picture of one bed, and it was from the prior year, and then took a picture of the bed I had been planting while practicing heart coherence. And it was so beautiful. It shocked me because I was doing the same thing. I was digging, I was planting seed, I was moving. But because I was in what I call Fibonacci frequency, you know what Fibonacci is, yeah?
Yeah.
Fibonacci is the man who discovered the golden ratio, which is the ratio that nature grows at, nature lives at. So the conch shell has this beautiful ratio that it grows at, and nature works within this. I call it Fibonacci frequency. It's a flow. It's a natural flow. And so when I practice heart coherence, my garden bed was just incredible. And even as it grew and the plants got bigger, it still stayed beautiful. It didn't look overrun in a mess like the other ones. So in developing self-mastery, there is the perspective of allowing the outside to inform the inside. So what I'm seeing outside me is what I'm perceiving inside me, and that's super important. And also, I want to share one thing, and that is, I think scientists do a lot of research and study, but they don't always know what results they're getting, or they don't know how to interpret it. So the law of thermodynamics that says every system tends toward entropy, right? Every system tends toward chaos. I'm looking at my garden bed, and I'm seeing all the weeds that are coming into the garden bed. And the scientists say, without an equal and opposite energy put into the system is chaos. So you could imagine a garden that somebody let go for a couple of years, and yeah, it's all full of weeds.
Yeah.
They're wrong. It's not chaos in my garden bed that I've left unattended. It's diversity. It's the garden actually growing a balance of plants so that one plant doesn't leach all the nutrients out. It's a garden that is a diverse number and quantity of plants that actually helps the soil and contributes to the earthworms, and it's not chaos. There is no chaos in nature, and that's where they missed it.
And that's the beautiful aspect. And I do like how you akin that to the Fibonacci frequency, the flow, in the zone, as many people call it. But it's this understanding that life will express itself how it needs to for its own benefit and growth and development.
Yeah, for your benefit.
For growth is just always a component to it. And that's the funny thing is, there's even been more research to show that they believe the Amazon rainforest now was actually just one of those, it was like one of the original food forests that people made, and it just kind of grew into this lush vegetation. But even looking at it that way, it's, there is this natural harmonizing act that life will always partake. Yes. And it's a beautiful dance when we align with it versus fighting against it.
Yes.
So it's even that gardening. I love it how life always expresses like super great, like deep philosophic thoughts through very simple subtleties, but when we're present and in the space to really be, then we can experience them for what they are.
Exactly. And our environment can be flow or it can be chaos, Depends on your perception. And that's the key to self-mastery. Can you go with the flow?
Yeah. The bird wing example was just next level on point because it's so true. And, it's how are we going to meet the resistance?
Mm-hmm.
When we resist it like the wall, it's always going to be a breaking moment because we don't want it.
Yeah.
We're not embracing it. We're not being loving with whatever life is presenting us. But when we really do take flight, it's because we adjust ourselves for the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, I love that. It really is that aspect of, every breath, every moment is a renewal to really change how you see yourself in this experience called life.
So did I tell you already that inspiration, to inspire, originally meant divine guidance?
Mm. Mm. Hmm. That's beautiful when we think about it in our sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
And that explains the Fibonacci frequency. It's divine.
Yeah. Well, and that's such another level of just the beauty of this experience that we're in, because in truth, bringing it full circle, we are space. We are mostly space and energy. We're in that ocean of energy. And it's funny because it's actually it's one of the not so prominent lessons of Jesus, but it's the concept of knowing yourself and seeing yourself as energy.
Mm-hmm.
Do not see this flesh as something dense and physical. See it as something ethereal and fluid. And when we're capable and able to really see ourselves as, this energy of love itself, then we become that much more ready and able to handle whatever life presents us. So it's this beautiful reminder where there's nothing that limits us but our own doing. In truth, it's whatever we're willing to hold on to. And unfortunately, most people are holding onto a hot pan complaining that their hand's getting burnt. So
yeah. And that's alignment. How do you align?
Wow. Mind blown. And with that, I just got to say thank you, Dawn, so much for coming on Creative Chat. That was awesome.
My pleasure.
Oh, and with that, listeners, I hope you tune in for part 2. Stay put for the after show, Dawn. It's going to be a good one. Roll the outro.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.
Peter, thanks for the platform. Thanks for going with me.
Yeah. No, thanks for diving deep. I always like these conversations. Always learn something new. Yeah, it really does take that the ascension on the light, resurrection on the lifeline to a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, phenomenal show. I mean, we went in blind, not knowing really just a topic. And
Who went in blind?
Well, we both did. I mean, we all did, like not knowing what to talk about. We were just going to talk about self-mastery. I mean, to be flying for the seat of our pants, it seemed like it was rehearsed and very well documented with talking notes. Like, I mean, when I go down and I break this down into segments, because that's what I do, it looks like it was planned. I mean, like one topic flowing into the next, circling back, mentioning one, going back and forth. There we go.
See your dog and raise you a cat.
Everything was tight as a whistle, if that's even a phrase.
Yeah.